Hey, and welcome back to the Dream Design Podcast with Amy Lee. I'm your host, Amy Lee Westervelt. Today, I have a super awesome guest who I love. She's a former client of mine. She's got incredible energy. And because we have such a good rapport, I actually forgot what it was that she calls herself because that's the kind of day we're having today. But the good news is you get to meet Rosemary Noe in just a second. She's awesome. She's going to tell you all about what she does. She has a really awesome workshop that is coming up very, very soon. She'll tell you about that too. So, welcome, Rosemary, to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me, Amy Lee.
Hi. So, just to get things started, why don't we tell them what it is that you do?
I am a life coach for women. I help moms really reconnect with joy in their life and find space in their busy lives for themselves. A lot of times when you're a mom, you're so busy and you start feeling like I just have too much to do. There's not a space for me. And so I really help moms realize there is space for you in that busy life with the endless carpool runs, sports practices, making lunches, bedtime chaos, morning chaos. You can have space for joy in your life with all of that going on. So that is what I do.
It's such an incredible, mission, but it's really true because I remember, and I don't tell people this story often. I remember when I was young and I was driving in with my mom in the car, and I was like, Mom, do you feel like after you had kids and like everything, did you feel like you didn't really have a reason to live? And she's like, What do you mean? And I'm like, well, I mean, you've already hit all the milestones, right? Like, don't you
Right.
feel like you just kind of did it all? And she's like, no. She's like, there's cruises to go on, there's grandchildren, there's all these things that, are still to be done. Like, oh, of course, my dogs would decide to have a pound fight right now. Did you hear that? Oh, awful.
No, I can just hear my dog clickety clacking.
Oh,
So,
good, good, good. Okay. No, well, then maybe the audience can't hear them either, but they sound like they're in like a junkyard right now. But yeah, there's this idea that when women, especially women, but men too, when women become mothers, that they're just these entities that were designed to meet every need of their children. And I think, I can't wait to hear what you think. I think that we're coming into a new generation of parents who are modeling completely different boundaries than our parents did. And our children are starting for the first time, I think, in history to see us as people, right? We're
yeah.
not just extensions of their needs and their wants and their desires. We're actually living, breathing humans that they are getting to interact with as opposed to kind of just their like slaves. What do you think?
I totally agree. I completely agree. I will say that my kids are just now starting to see that about me because my kids are, a little bit older. And so, they grew up without screens, they grew up without, a lot of the stuff that is available now. And so for them, they're still kind of, even though that some of them are in college and one just graduated from college, and she's a great example. I was on a call in my room yesterday and she just walked in. She's 22 years old. She just assumes when she needs something, I'm available. And she was very annoyed that I was not, and came and told my husband, "What's mom doing?" And he said, "I don't know. She's on a call." And and she's like, "Oh, I need some help." And he said, "Well, can I help you?" And she said, "Probably not." So it's just that mindset of mom is just there to help me whenever I'm available. And so my kids are really not quite there in making that shift into realizing that. But like you said, I'm Gen X, but I think this next generation of parents is going to have that kind of separation between I am your parent, but I am also my own person.
Yeah, it's true. It really is. And I think what they call my generation, I think I'm like half a generation under you. I think it's called Zennial. So I'm like half
Yeah.
Gen X, but half millennial. Like I don't quite fit into either. The internet
Yeah.
came out when I was in my teens. So like I grew up with a corded phone, had a cell phone in college, kind of a thing.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think one of the really important things that I think women tend to not real oh good, my neighbor's mowing their lawn, that's what it is. That women tend to not realize is that when we have bad boundaries with our children, around our time and our needs, we're also modeling those bad boundaries. And we're going to end up with children who think it's okay for people to disregard their need to be alone and disregard their time. So, in my family, we have very strict, well, not strict, but like we have very open conversations where I don't just say, like in my generation, right? Like my mom would be like, I need a couple minutes, or like go in your room and play. I'm busy.
Right.
I'm like, hey, I am very energetically stressed out from the five of you all around me, and
Yes.
I need to go reset.
Hmm.
When I'm done, I'll be back. And so I think that is something I've seen you model much more recently with your
Yes,
kids,
definitely.
because that's what's going to help your daughter and your son and your daughter and your son and your daughter,
Yeah,
um, is going to help them to see, okay, this is what it looks like to be in a healthy marriage, in a healthy parent relationship. So
absolutely.
I think it's important for you, but I think it's also really important for your legacy.
Absolutely. I totally agree. 100%. Because I feel like my parents didn't necessarily care about my happiness. I'm not saying they didn't love me. Of course they loved me, but the generation of parents mine were they never really checked in. How are you feeling emotionally? Are you happy? How's school going? It was more of a hands-off parenting dynamic. And so my generation of parents is there's a lot of helicopter parents. I'm not one, but I do care that my children are happy. I care if there's, school drama. I care, what's going on with your friends and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And so I think that my generation went too far in the other direction from what we didn't have with our parents.
Absolutely. Yes. We went to the, yeah, yeah, exactly. They went to the complete opposite side of like,
Yes,
let me, meet your every need. And now we have a society of, and I'm sorry if you don't agree with this, y'all,
I
because
agree with it. Whatever you're going to say, I agree.
entitled,
Hmm.
entitled, very emotionally dumping, you know,
Yes,
people
yes,
who feel as though their feelings are paramount
to
beyond
everything.
what anything else is going on, which
Exactly.
of course they have a place, but I don't think that they're the end all be all. And what's interesting, you and I are very similar, right? Like we've talked about how we see each
Mhm.
other in each other all the time, because we're both empaths. One of the things that happens to us, and I think it's in, I don't know if you have in your human design, I can't remember if you have an open solar plexus.
I
um
do.
yeah. So as an open solar plexus, what that means is that we kind of stuff our own emotions, right? As was
Yes,
taught by our parents,
absolutely.
but we're like sponges for everybody else's.
Absolutely.
So we
Hmm.
attract a lot of people who are like energy vampires a little bit, but
Hmm.
not even energy vampires, because that implies that they suck out our energy. It's more like they're energy dumpers.
Energy
Like
vomiters.
energy vomiters. Yeah, they're actually putting their energy into our field, which I think is a fantastic juxtaposition to, or not a juxtaposition, but lead in to what you've been talking about lately. And I think there's so many different ways to go when it comes to building joy and creating joy, and obviously there's lots of coaches that take different approaches to that. But what you're talking about is really kind of an inside job, isn't it? It's really about
Absolutely.
that person taking back, their energy, building their own boundaries. So I would love to hear more about your work with people pleasing.
Yeah. So, people pleasing is something that has so many facets. We are taught from society to be good and be nice. And so when you get that message, that's the very first place we get it. And then we become parents and we want our children to be happy. And, we may or may not have a partner, but we want everybody to be happy around us. And it's so easy to fall into a habit of, with all of these outside messages of be good, be nice, of wanting to please people and do things for everybody, but more from a place of I'm going to do that so that you will love me, so that
Right.
so that I will feel good enough. And what
So I
I'm
can earn
really
my place on the planet, like,
exactly,
yeah.
yes.
Mhm, mhm.
And what I'm really hoping to shift with this workshop is to shift it to a loving helper attitude, where it's not to fill my need, it's to do things for you because I'm your parent, because I'm your spouse, because I'm your friend, whatever, but not because I'm going to fill my needs, but because I love you and these things need to be done. And it's really about shifting that mindset for you on the inside. And so, I had a lot of feedback when I was promoting this workshop, um, in my both on social media and in my DMs, like, oh my gosh, I could never stop doing stuff for my family. And I had to tell them, I'm not telling you to stop taking care of your family. It's more of a shift in how you feel about it. And there are some things maybe you should stop doing. Like, I know that when, one of the things I talk about was mornings. Mornings when my kids were in school were an absolute, disaster because I didn't have strong boundaries. Everybody was grumpy. And so I would do anything I could to get them out the door. And so, oh, I dropped my sock. Well, I'm going to pick it up to get it for you. No, I don't know why I did that, but um, it's more, so that was not something I would probably do again. But, it's not about stopping doing the things for the people you love, but it's more about why you're doing it.
It's,
Does that make
yeah, it's the
sense?
it's the codependency aspect. It's the
Yes.
fact that there's an energetic tethering between you and that child where you feel, or your spouse, right? Because I think,
Right.
again, going back and being very, very delicate about the conversation, the way we grew up, because we're very similar, the way that
Yes.
we grew up was very indicative of becoming codependent, right? Because it was like
Absolutely.
you knew that you had to be the dancing bear in order to keep the good graces of those people who were taking care of you. And if
Yes.
you didn't do that, then you put yourself in danger. Not necessarily like
Yes.
someone's going to hurt you or hit you, but energetic danger is a real danger. And to a child, a parent, the person who's supposed to take care of them, who's supposed to, and this is the complete flip side of what we're talking about with our parenting, but a parent who's supposed to take care of them, who's supposed to meet their needs, who's angry at them, or who is
Hmm.
closed off emotionally, to a
Right.
small child, that's terrifying. And like
Hmm.
you said, so many people in our co-generation felt that growing up and were so terrified of that they went to the complete opposite and created
Right.
monsters. And so we have a lot of monsters walking around right now as young adults, what would be called
Yes.
Gen Z or whatever. These people who are just like, oh, I didn't like the way the boss looked at me, so I quit my job, or, I
Right.
demanded blah, 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 or like, he didn't give me the lunch I wanted, so I'm going to go report him for sexual harassment, or,
Right.
whatever it is that
I
these,
didn't feel like going to work today, so I just didn't,
yeah,
or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. How do you feel about, because I don't think it's so much with you and me, but how do you feel about the ramifications of knowing that the way that we were before we knew any better may have emboldened a generation of people who are that way? Like, how do you reconcile that?
Um, I feel like I reached a level of awareness pretty early with my children,
Mhm.
at least the younger ones, of hold on here, I'm turning the, and I'm not saying that my children are perfect by any
Oh,
stretch,
me neither.
but as an example, when my kids hit the fourth grade, the younger ones, I told them, I'm done. You're with school. You are in charge of school. School is your number one job. I'll sign your dumb planner if I have to, but I'm not keeping track of your tests. I'm not keeping track of your assignments. If you need my help, fine. If I need to go drop $50 at Michael's for your stupid school project, whatever, I'll do that. But I am not involved in your schoolwork anymore. And whenever I would tell that story at the schools, you would think that I had told the other parents that I hung my children up upside down from their closet by their feet at night. I mean, they were just like, "Oh my gosh, how did you do that? How did your children react? How?" I mean, it was so controversial, and I was like, "Well, they were fourth graders. needed to learn to do things for themselves, because by the time they reached high school, I wanted them to be fully responsible for their schoolwork, fully and independent, because once they hit high school, I didn't want to be, holding their hand, and then particularly once they got to college. And so I cannot tell you how many of these children that we saw in high school who the parents were still doing all of the things, excuse me, still so involved with, even in middle school, I was a football team mom, and one of the moms was like, "Oh my gosh, we can't have practice. We have a big science test tomorrow." And I was like, "What science test?" They're like, "You don't know about the science test?" I was like, "No, I don't keep up. Dylan's in charge of his own stuff." And it was like, oh my gosh. But I saw it so much in high school, and my son tells me about it, and my daughter as well. These kids get to college and they flounder because mom's not there. So in terms of your original question, how do I feel? I feel like I, as a parent, recognized that and kind of nipped it in the bud with my children. And so, but I've seen the effects of it with my children's peers, and it's it scares me a bit for the future. But I also think that there is a sense of resilience and just in people and children in general, and I'm hopeful that these children will eventually figure it out. You know, there are some kids that do turn it around and flourish and figure it out, and then there are some kids that maybe can't cut it and they end up going down a different path of not making it whatever their parents' dreams were or whatever. I don't know, but I understand. I understand your question, and I feel like I did a pretty good job of realizing that was happening, and at least from a school perspective, and just nipping that in the bud. And I feel like in terms of that, I did a pretty good job of like, okay, no, this isn't going to work. So for anybody out there listening, take my advice and definitely empower your children to take that responsibility as early as possible, because it will do them favors in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. We've got people out there that are like, okay, great, that's what I want, but what about my kids? Or I'm afraid, I'm afraid. And it's important to kind of shock and awe you a little bit to be like, here's what happens if you don't. Here's what you're creating if you don't. Like, it's not just
Yes.
about your own joy, although that is definitely part of it. And then we get into the empty nest thing, right? If you're a person who's been enmeshed with your child your whole life, or your partner, whatever, but especially your
Mm-hmm.
child, and you've got this codependent relationship, and then they go off to college, or they go off to the military, or whatever it is that they go
Whatever
do,
they do, right?
who even are you anymore in your own life if you don't have a relationship with your spouse, if you don't have your own, interests? That's going to be a lot more of a shock to your system when that day comes, or heaven forbid, you're so afraid for that day to come that your child lives with you forever. And we've seen what happens when that happens, right? We all
That's
know
so
the man that
true.
lives in his mother's basement.
Yeah, because I joined a couple of empty nest groups on Facebook when I became a partial empty nester. Because my youngest biological child is now starting his second year of college. I still have two bonus kids that are still in high school. Um, and I just was astonished at exactly what you're describing. These mothers who are just completely lost without their children. They fall into deep depressions. They can't get out of bed. They don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know what to do with their lives. And it's not just one person. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of these women out there. And I it's it makes me sad for them. And it also makes me sad for their children, because that's a lot of pressure to put on your child when they are trying to go out and start their new life and start the next phase of their life, knowing that your mother, who gave you life and has been a big part of your life, is home feeling that way. That's a lot of pressure to put on your child. But, you know, when my daughter left for college, I admit I cried for 3 weeks. I was very sad, because she and I are very close, but also because she was having a hard time. She's my very, very shy, introverted one. Um, but then when my son left last year, I think he thought I was a lot sadder than I really was. Because that's really the goal of parenting, is to raise a child that's going to feel like they are ready to grow up and move on to the next part of their life, you know? And a lot of parents have a hard time with that disconnection. And it's normal to be sad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to miss them. But the level of attachment that I'm seeing in some of these empty nest groups is pretty next level. And, my husband and I, as we've still got two more in the nest, and we're excited for the day we have our empty nest. We look forward to having that time together and really starting the next phase of our life together as I launch my coaching business, and he's got his career and doing stuff for ourselves, and that's really kind of the goal of parenting, is to raise these independent, sovereign beings who feel strong enough and independent enough and capable enough to go out into the world on their own. Now, don't get me wrong, there have been times where I've gotten messages like pretty basic stuff, how to address an envelope. Like, how did that fall through the cracks, But that's just not something we do that often these days, with everything online. But and again, I'm not a perfect parent, not trying to portray that picture at all, but there is a lot of attachment parenting that is going on, I think, longer than it should. I think, I was an attachment parent. My children slept with me in the bed, a lot of controversy around that, but not until they were 18.
There's also a difference too between attachment and enmeshing, right? Because attachment is
Right,
like, I'm still nurturing you. You're my little baby monkey. I'm going to
mhm,
protect you from the world. Enmeshment is more like you're an extension of me. And
right,
you know me and my metaphysical woo-woo background, right? Like I believe, and I don't know, you may share this belief, that everybody comes to the planet with their own contract with the, with Earth,
mhm,
and we're just here to steward other souls. We have this
right,
illusion, they had to make it make sense for us cosmically, where this is our child and this is this thing that we own, and we're in charge of it. But at the end of the day, they're other souls that are here on their own mission, and we're like their camp counselors, we're their RAs, right?
right,
So like, even with my son, my youngest son,
right.
Omri, he has these
Yes.
special needs that
Just
are
had her birthday.
yeah, super. Yep. He just turned 3. Super rare syndrome that he has. That I think there's 200 people in the world or something like that who have it. It's very rare. His doctor had never seen it before. And I could sit here and think like, oh gosh, like this is what happened to my son. But he was always going to be that person. He came
Right.
here on his own journey, and God source higher power was like, would you like to be in charge of helping this person get to their next level? And I'm like, heck yes, I would. So
Yes.
I think that's another thing to keep in mind. Parents think like, oh, but this is my baby. This is, I made this. Like, here's this thing. Yes, and it has the child has their own aspirations, their own things. They're going to go through pain, they're going to go through struggle and journey and all this stuff. And when you take that upon yourself, what you're doing
Mhm.
is you're imprinting somebody else's, you know, journey
Stuff.
onto
Yes.
you, instead of having the journey that you're meant to have. And so that's why I think what you're doing with helping people find that joy, their own joy, not vicarious joy, not codependent joy,
Right.
but
Yes.
their own joy in their own body. And that's why, and I think you're a great model of this too, cultivating that intimacy with your partner, having that
Yes.
little, that quietness, that stillness with the two of you, so that
Mhm.
when you're sitting there and all the kids are gone, you're not like getting to know each other again, you know?
Yes.
And I think
Yeah,
you do a great job of that.
Yeah, we had dinner with some friends over the weekend who have a lot of small kids, and they were we were telling them when you have a big family, which you do as well, you have to put your relationship first. And it's hard because you're so busy, but you have
There's a
to
lot of guilt.
visualize the two of you here and all of these little nitpicky things, the kids, the washer breaking, the whatever, as little arrows trying to attack you. And you just have to huddle together and consider yourselves primary first. Put your relationship first. That's the only way you're going to survive, that your marriage is going to survive. And you have to find those moments to be together, those moments of intimacy, and you just really have to be partners, and whatever that looks like for you. You know, everybody's marriage is different, but really foster that feeling of we are in this together. And I hate to use the word survive, but sometimes it feels like survival when the kids are little and it's chaos and you've got everybody's got the flu or everybody's got a stomach bug. You just really have to create a feeling of partnership, and this relationship comes first. That doesn't mean you ignore your children. That doesn't mean you don't take care of your children, but that means you are making your relationship with your partner the most important thing. And, I feel like, again, my marriage is not perfect. We've definitely had our ups and downs, but we have always had that sense of we are in this together. And, we're almost at the end of our parenting journey, at least the hands on piece. And like I said, we can't wait until it's just us because we've never had that. So, yeah, something we really look forward to.
Yeah, and just to wrap that up in a bow, recognizing that parenting doesn't define us. It is a phase.
Mhm.
And yes, there's sadness in that, oh, I'll never
Mhm.
have a baby again. Oh, I'll never, yes, you'll never wear size 3 underwear again either. You'll never drink out of a bottle again. You'll never have your first kiss with your partner. And that's okay, because for
Right.
everything that we let go from the past, we open up the energy for something
For
new in the
something new.
future.
Right.
Exactly. You're already a grandmother and you have all
Yes.
these incredible things that are happening to you for this phase. And who would ever want to miss out on a whole phase of life, right? Like that's life is supposed to have different aspects and different pieces, and we grow and we become, oh gosh, if I knew this when well, yeah, but then you wouldn't have had the journey. You know what I mean? So I think
Exactly.
what you're doing is absolutely powerful. I also know that you have a time constraint. So I want to make sure that
Okay.
we get all of your information out. So you have a people pleasing kind of freebie that you wanted to talk about, right?
Yes, I'm doing a workshop today at noon. Drop the people. It's permission to drop the people pleaser. We're going to talk about people pleasing. We're going to talk about mom guilt. We're going to talk about how to create boundaries. We're going to talk about how to build that dream life that you didn't necessarily think was possible for you as a mom. And we're going to do this really fun exercise on figuring out what's really important to you, and it's kind of probably be a wake up call for a lot of people. Okay, what's important to you, and are you living in alignment with that? And when I first did this exercise in my coaching program, I was like, oh, yeah, no, I'm kind of not. And so it's going to be so packed with so much great information. And it's today at noon, but if people sign up, they can get the replay. So it's going to be really amazing. So excited for it.
Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. And I love me some dream design. Anytime we're talking about the perfect
Yes.
anything, I'm like, yes, that is so my jam. Okay, and then how people can get a hold of you if they want to like learn more about you, read your stuff, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So I'm on Facebook at Rosemary Noe Rosemary.Noe, and I'm on Instagram and I am Rosemary Noe. Yeah. So that is me. And yeah.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. I am so glad that you were able to come on the show. You
And
guys obviously, okay.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
It's been fun.
absolutely. Obviously, you guys want to go follow her, do all the things. I'm going to go ahead and let her run so she can go get ready for that workshop. But if you guys want to go check it out, and if you're watching this on the replay, all these yummy things will be in the show notes. But it's going to be amazing. So definitely check it out. Thank you so much, Rosemary, for being
Thank
here.
you, Amy Lee. Mwah. Love you.
I love you too. And that will do it for this episode of the Dream Design Podcast with Amy Lee. Until I come back next week with another great guest, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, and may you be at peace. Namaste.